Hello YouTube, my name is Nero and today we have some Call of Duty Black Ops 3 playing a bit of Kill Confirmed here on the map Aquarium, right around the Weevil submachine gun, which is one of my favorite weapons here in Black Ops 3, but at the same time it's one of the most controversial weapons of Black Ops 3 because everybody seems to have a differing opinion. Nobody can seem to make up their minds on this weapon. A lot of people seem to think that the Weevil is far too weak and that needs to be buffed, whereas I'm in the minority opinion. I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I feel as though the weapon itself is perfectly balanced. I feel as though it's a perfectly viable weapon, and I'm not quite sure where everyone's coming from when they say the weapon is far too weak, and we're going to be discussing that a bit more in depth here in this video. But before we get into that, I would like to wish you guys a happy double XP weekend. I know a lot of you guys are probably busy with work or school or just the holiday season in general and maybe haven't hopped on Black Ops 3 this weekend, but if you're not in the know, it is double XP weekend. It's going to be running from December 11th over to December 14th, and of course it's going to be ending on the 14th on Monday, usually at 5 a.m. Easterns when they end it, so try to get in a couple hours of Black Ops 3 this weekend, because I think we can all agree it takes a very long time to level up here in this game, and double XP is definitely nice. And they've also added a Nuketown 24/7 playlist this weekend, so try it out if that tickles your fancy. So let's go ahead and talk about the Weevil submachine gun here a little bit, because again, it's one of the most controversial weapons here in Black Ops 3. A lot of people seem to think it's very weak, and I'm not quite sure where they're coming from, and we're going to be discussing that here in this video. So the Weevil, this is one of my favorite weapons here in Black Ops 3 as I turn around here and just walk into that grenade, because I don't have a flak jacket on this class, so I'm going to be discussing that here later on in the video. But the Weevil is one of my favorite weapons here in Black Ops 3. I've used it a ton in the live version of the game. It's in my top 5 weapons, whereas at the same time, I used it a bunch during the beta. Like, if you guys remember my coverage of the Black Ops 3 beta, this was one of the weapons I used the most during that. Like, I got this weapon up to max level faster than any other weapon during the beta. I did a guide on this weapon during the beta, and just, it's one of those weapons I kind of naturally gravitated towards. And I think the reason for that is because it looks a lot like the P90 from COD 4 and Modern Warfare 2. It just has the exact same reload animation. It just looks a lot like it, and just as a result, I kind of like naturally gravitated towards it. Turns out it's not really much like the P90. It shares a giant magazine size like the P90 does, but its fire rate is way slower than the P90, and that's one of the things that kind of makes the P90 is the fact that it shoots ridiculously quickly. This weapon is actually a lot more like the Black Ops 2 PW57. If you guys remember that submachine gun, this actually has a ton of shared traits to that weapon. So it has a 50-round magazine, just like the PW. It has a 750 rounds per minute fire rate, just like the PW, and it actually has slightly worse damage than the PW from Black Ops 2. So here are going to be the damage meters here. Now, I don't take too much stock in the damage of weapons here in Call of Duty. As you can see, the Weevil does 30 damage up close, whereas the PW did 35, and then it drops off to 29. It actually does better damage long range than the PW does, but just 5 points of damage, 4 points of damage, 1 point of damage. Like, these things don't really matter much to me in Call of Duty, a game where every weapon shoots ridiculously quickly, a game where you die in milliseconds, a game where lag compensation is a thing, and connection is a thing, and it's all peer-to-peer hosting for the most part. It just, to me, damage meters never really seem to matter too much, but essentially what you can take away from this is the Weevil here in Black Ops 3 is going to take roughly 4 to 6 shots to kill just about all the time, whereas the PW in Black Ops 2 took 3 to 6 shots to kill just about all the time, right? So they're essentially the same weapon, same fire rate, almost identical damage output, same magazine size. They're essentially the same weapon. So as a result, I just kind of naturally started doing well with this weapon right away, because again, it's the exact same thing as a PW57 from Call of Duty Black Ops 2. But to be fair, not everybody liked the PW57 from Black Ops 2, and that's understandable because not everybody likes everything. But for me personally, when it comes down to personal preference, I thought the PW was fine in Black Ops 2. It was actually one of my most used weapons, and I had like well over 60-something thousand kills after I reset my stats because I had way too much playtime in that game. And yes, that's saying something. I used that gun a ton. It was one of my favorite guns in Black Ops 2, and the same is kind of true here in Black Ops 3 with the Weevil, because again, they're almost the exact same weapon. In fact, more often than not, I use this as my stealth weapon. This is actually the class I use majority of the time when I'm playing with the Weevil. I use the red dot sight, but that's personal preference. If you guys like the iron sights, feel free to swap that out. But I just feel as though I do better while using a red dot sight. But I use the foregrip, I use the silencer, I'm using ghost, I'm using dead silence, awareness, and of course fast hands. I feel as though fast hands is a very good perk overall. And I basically sneak around the map essentially. I'm running around with ghosts, they never see me coming. I'm shooting with a silencer, so I'm not showing off on the map with that. I have dead silence and awareness on, so they don't hear me coming, and I hear them coming. It just, I use it that way, and I feel as though the Weevil actually plays pretty well in that respect. But at the same time, it's also a very good close quarters weapon. Like, Like, this is also one of my favorite weapons to use on Nuketown, because by default, you have a giant magazine, so it's very easy to pick up, you know, double kills and triple kills, and sometimes quad kills. I have a couple of those, which will be in my montage, because they're actually really cool clips. But yeah, the Weevil itself is just very good. I like using it a ton. Now, a lot of people are going to disagree with using a silencer on it, because apparently the silencers in this game are a bit different in that there's a lot bigger of a damage reduction, or range reduction, I should say, here in Black Ops 3. But again, the proof is in the pudding, guys. Watching the gameplay, it really doesn't seem to hinder me all that much, right? It just really doesn't seem to make the gun any worse for wear. It just makes it so I don't show up on the minimap. So that's how I like using the Weevil. I feel as though it's just a very fun, balanced overall weapon, and I really don't understand a lot of the backlash people are giving it, saying that it needs to be buffed. Maybe in competitive play, if you're going up against like Pharaohs, or if you're going up against maybe VMPs, or even especially the Vesper at close ranges, probably you're going to have a bit of difficulty with the Weevil. But in the actual game itself, like in the actual online game where you're playing just public matches against normal people, it's a fine gun and it works just fine. Not every weapon needs to be up there in competitive play, the same way that the PW wasn't really that much of a competitive weapon in the later stages of Black Ops 2. It was a fine weapon in public matches. Was it one of the best that people are using all the time in competitive? Not so much. I mean, people will kind of lean towards the MSMC if they were going to be rocking a submachine gun the majority of the time in that game, or maybe sometimes they go out to like a Scorpion Evo or something. But yeah, so it doesn't need to be a super competitive gun. It just needs to be a balanced gun within the context of the Black Ops 3 multiplayer, and that's exactly why I feel as though the Weevil is. And as a result, I don't see why all the backlash for the Weevil, because again, it's almost the exact same weapon as the PW. Not every weapon is going to be the best gun in the game. Not every weapon can be an M8A7. Not every weapon can be a Pharaoh. Not every weapon can be a VMP, you know. And so as a result, I feel as though in the context of Black Ops 3, the Weevil itself is pretty balanced, and hopefully you can walk away from this video with a bit of a different understanding of the weapon itself, and maybe have a different mindset when using it. Because while I see some of my friends using it, they're like, oh gosh, this gun just tickles them to death. I'm like, well, it doesn't have the highest damage output, sure, but like surely it's a fine SMG. Like, it doesn't need to be the best SMG in the game, it just needs to be viable. And that's what I feel as though the Weevil is. I feel as though it's a viable submachine gun in every aspect of the game. And yeah, it's also one of my favorites. I think I'm a bit biased in that respect too, because I just like the weapon. You know, ever since the launch of the game, I clicked with the weapon. I thought it was good. And so when everyone kept saying like, oh, it's very weak, and I get that I'm in the minority opinion, which makes me feel as though I'm wrong somehow, because everybody else seems to have a different opinion than me. But I just feel as though it's a fine weapon. I use it a ton. It's one of my favorites. And yeah, that's today's video. And hopefully you guys all enjoyed. Hopefully you guys all found it helpful and informative. And let me know in the comments, what do you guys think about the Weevil? Do you guys think it's too buff, too weak? Like, what is it? Let me know about that. Hopefully you guys all enjoy your double XP weekend. I hope you guys all enjoyed the video. Remember to leave a rating, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.